What do veteran cruisers say about their cruises, the cruise lines, and their advice for new-time cruisers? Stay tuned. Okay, so let's start this. Please tell us your first name and where you're from.
My name is Jerry, and I'm from the state of Delaware.
This is Jerry from Florida.
I'm Helena. I'm originally from New York, which I guess you could get out of that. I moved to Connecticut, and I'm a transplant over the last 35 years to Florida.
And how many cruises have you done, Jerry?
Just over 30 with Norwegian alone, and probably another 8 ocean or river cruises.
Oh, probably 15 or so.
That's a very interesting question to ask. In the 1970s and 80s, I did cruises on Holland America and Home Lines, which no longer exist.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
And Holland America's was the Rotterdam, and that was not a cruise ship, that was an ocean liner. And I did that with my family. So I don't actually count those. I began counting in 2004. And that's when I accumulated a total, the next cruise up, of 32 cruises.
Wow.
This one will be 31 days for me. So
you're counting that as one, yes. Okay.
Okay, you understand.
Yeah, I
All right.
understand, yes. Great. So what is your favorite cruise line? I'm guessing Norwegian.
It is.
And why?
Because of their strong commitment to solo travelers, even though I don't always travel solo. But when I do travel solo, you can count on them to have a solo coordinator to get together and meet people in the evenings.
What were your favorite cruises and destinations?
I also do land tours, so I'm going to say favorite countries are Morocco, Turkey, Eastern Mediterranean countries. I also like Europe, so I've probably enjoyed various aspects of every cruise I've been on.
What were your favorite cruises and destinations?
Well, you have to divide that up into two classes. For the larger ships, we've tended to like Celebrity the best. And for the smaller ships, we've liked Oceania. We did like Crystal, but Crystal went under. Well, Celebrity is a moderately priced cruise, has very good shows, better in fact than you find on the smaller ships. The food, while I would say is only on the average to good in the main dining halls, they have excellent specialty restaurants. The Murano and the Tuscan Grill on Celebrity are as good as you'll find on any ship.
So what's your favorite cruise line and why?
Well, I have to say Holland America, and that's because that's the line that I grew up on. It went out of New York. It was the old magic one. The ship was small, but it was elegant, and it still allowed people to go on the ship to Bon Voyage party with you, get off and go on the top of the parking lot across from the ship and throw streamers and do things like that. So it's a memory that's always stuck with me. When people ask me what cruise line do I like, I always say the next one. Why? It's the excitement, the hope, and the joy of knowing that you're going someplace else.
Right.
I'm going to have to say Bruges.
Really?
Bruges. I like the canals. They're clean, they don't smell. It's fairy tale-like. At night, it's magical. I wouldn't equate it with Sintra, which is also fairy tale-like, but I haven't seen Sintra at night.
Yeah.
but I've seen cruise shipping.
Great. So, what lines do you avoid? Just you personally?
I personally avoid Carnival. I think it's just a younger crowd, and their interests are different than mine. And Princess.
Carnival, because it's for a younger crowd, a little bit too noisy and too party going for our age group. Princess, I don't know, because the first time we went on Princess, the food was not too good, and I'm a foodie, so it didn't appeal to me.
Okay. Cruise lines that I specifically avoid have more to do with timing than anything else. Carnival is one. It's great if I want to party and I want to do short little cruises someplace. They've just recently developed much longer cruises. But I see it as a party ship, and yes, I've been on a lot of carnivals when I was a lot younger. I'm 75 years old now, and I just don't party the same way. So I would have to say Carnival.
So, what other forms of travel do you enjoy? You said you like to do land trips.
I do land trips too.
Do you combine them with cruising?
Sometimes, but they're not. It's only 4, 5, 6 days on land before or after a cruise, as opposed to doing a 2-week or a 4-week tour with a tour company.
We've probably been almost every kind of mode of travel you can think of, and it just depends. Obviously, if you want to stay in a place a long time, you don't take a cruise to it, because you're only there a day or maybe 2 days. You need a longer time. Then it depends on what modes of transportation you have once you're there. You know, so you're going to be car, it could be cheroot, you could be a train, it could be a camel.
Great. So, what other forms of travel do you enjoy, and do you ever link them with cruising?
Always do. I take transatlantics back and forth, transpacifics. I use transatlantics as transportation. It allows me to get to Lisbon, Barcelona, Copenhagen, and then I'm able to either stay there or hook up and do things locally. So I use it as transportation a lot. So we're getting ready to go on the next leg, and there were only to be 2 port days, Azores and Bermuda. The Azores have been taken out.
Yeah.
But I knew that this time of year, it's hard to get into the Azores because of the waters, so I was not expecting it as a place to go.
Okay.
That's what happens when you cruise a long time.
Right.
You begin to build up expectations and handle those expectations at a later point in time.
So, pick for me one story that stands out for you from cruising, something that you've experienced.
The story I'd like to relate is not about me. It's a story I was told by a fellow cruiser. She had been on a cruise to South America by herself, and her significant other died in New York City. And her story was about how Norwegian conveyed the issue to her, how they helped her get herself together and her clothes packed and got her off the ship and helped her notify people and use NCL resources to her advantage. And it was such a kind and compassionate story that it just made me like NCL more.
That's a wonderful story.
It is.
Well, one of the nicest ones was, interestingly enough, in Royal Caribbean, which is not my favorite cruise line, but we took our whole family on it. And our granddaughter Abby was just like 4 or 5, whatever she was at the time, and we just got such a kick out of her, because even then she was a performer, today she's been in many, many shows. But then she was just, very little, but nothing seemed to faze her. And this one of the people that was serving it, one of the servers named Modi, just took a liking to her, and it was just so sweet to watch the two of them interact during the cruise, and he got her to where she went up. They gave her a microphone, and here at her age, she's belting out a song. So I remember that.
The one story that actually stands out from my time of cruising is we were on a ship leaving out of Fort Lauderdale, and we're going to go through the Panama Canal up the California coast, and we were going to head up to Alaska. And we met a couple on that ship. My husband and I spent a lot of time talking with them, and they weren't going to Alaska. They live in Sydney, British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and they've gone to Alaska so many times. And they said, when you come back, don't get off in Vancouver. We will meet you in Victoria. Come stay with us.
Really?
And so we decided to take the risk and do it, because we spent a lot of time with them, because cruise days are like dog days. They last longer, and you develop, and you know people a lot better. So we did, and they were only there 2 or 3 days, and they showed us where the hospital was and everything else, and took us around, and then gave us the keys to the house, the keys to their car, refrigerator full, and said that they had to go to London to see their family. We have cruised so many times since then. They've come to my house, we've gone to their house. In fact, just before I came on this one, I was with them in Sydney,
That's
British
a great
Columbia.
story.
Yeah.
So last thing, what advice would you give to a new cruiser?
The first piece of advice that I would give to a new cruiser is you are spending your hard-earned money, and you should make it work for you. I would join Cruise Critic. I would get on the roll call, which is sort of in the middle of their face page. At the top of the face page is generically about the cruise line, and I would dive into that periodically. And the bottom part of the face page is ports of call. I would really use all the information you could find to avoid issues and to enhance your trip.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the interview.
You're quite welcome.
First-time cruisers, I think it would be very useful to do what probably you're doing right now, which is to check out what other previous travelers have said about that cruise line, and look at the 4 or 5 things that are most important to you. That might be size of the cabin, the food, the variety of things you can do on it, the itinerary of ports you're going to stay at. So these, things that kind of a checklist that you would have in mind, and then see what the reviewers say about it, because they may surprise you with very helpful hints.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jerry. Appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Manage your expectations. Determine if you're going for the ship or cabin, or if you're going for specific ports, and what are your hot points? I mean, is it going to be food, culture, architecture? What is it? Romance? Determine what your hot points are, and stick to those hot points, and measure. Just measure how you respond to those.